everybody. Sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to give you all a very warm welcome. Thank you for taking time out of your very busy GDC schedules to spend some time with ExcelByte and 1047 Games. We're really excited to have you here. A little bit of housekeeping. The Fireside chat today is going to last about 45 minutes, and then after that, we're going to have about 15 minutes for Q&A. But we're really excited to have all of you here today. Jun Lee, CEO of ExcelByte. Where is he at? He's around here somewhere. Jun is going to be sitting down with this gentleman right here, Ian Proulx, CEO and co-founder of 1047 Games. Very excited. The company, you probably know about them. They've been in the news a lot. The folks behind the award-winning portal-fueled arena shooter Splitgate. Since the company's founding in Ian's dorm room at Stanford University, it has grown to be one of the fastest growing game companies in the world, and with employees all over the world, one of the really fast and hot rising game developers out there. So we're very excited to have them both here to talk more about Splitgate and how it's been going. So thank you very much.
Hi, Ian.
Hey, Jun. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for making the time. I have a list of questions for you.
All right,
Are you scared?
I'm not. Okay, am I? Do I sound okay? Is this too loud or is this good? Good. Okay.
All right. So obviously, you guys are successful, but you've been around for many years, right? Tell us how you first get started.
Yeah, for sure. So this was actually an idea I had many years ago back in high school. So I played, I was a huge gamer. I played Portal 2 and just absolutely fell in love with the concept of portals, the Valve, the games from Valve. But as a kid in high school who played a lot of Halo and Call of Duty, I thought, man, this would be even better if it had guns in it. And I didn't think I was ever going to actually go be the one to build this. It was more like, oh, this would be really cool. I hope that Valve or somebody else goes and does this, right?
Right.
But I went to Stanford. I studied computer science, and I was really interested in learning game development. And they didn't have any sort of gaming class. So I studied computer science because I wanted to learn how to build games. So for my senior project, I actually built a prototype of a first-person shooter with portals. Because if I'm going to learn how to build games, I might as well build the idea that I had. I didn't think anything of it. I didn't think I was going to ever actually, even at the time, it was just a school project to learn Unreal Engine. But it was actually the weekend before the senior project fair. I asked 7 of my friends who had gaming PCs, can you guys come play test this thing? And because so far I've only tested this by myself on my own 2 laptops. So I don't even know if the thing runs on more than 2 machines. I have no idea if it's fun. And I'm about to have this, this booth at the senior project fair with a lot of people playing all day and multiple setups. So I get my friends to kind of begrudgingly agree to come play test for 45 minutes. And, of course, nobody had time because we had finals next week. And we ended up playing for about 5 hours straight. And so, that was the aha moment for me of like, okay, wow, I'm really on to something, right?
Right.
Even my group of friends, even in this really rough state with 1 map, 1 gun, horrible mechanics at the time, we're playing for 5 hours straight the weekend before finals because it's that addicting. So that was the validation, and that's when I started thinking okay, maybe I should go pursue this thing full time.
Did you ace the final though?
Say that again?
Did you ace the final?
Yeah.
Yeah. So after the prototype, what happened next? How do you get from a school project to be a more better playable and how do you build your first few people? How do you convince them to join your team?
Yeah. So, well, the first person I needed to hire was my co-founder, Nick.
How do you know Nick?
Say that again?
How did you know Nick?
So Nick was a good friend of mine. We actually named 1047 Games was named after our dorm. So I didn't actually know I was going to hire Nick originally, or partner with him rather. It was actually, I came back to get my master's degree, and I knew I needed to build a team, and so basically what I did is I organized a group of anybody who wants to join, who wants to come learn Unreal Engine together. We'll meet at my apartment twice a week, and we're just going to learn this thing. I didn't tell anybody the idea. I just wanted to see, let's get a group, let's have fun with it, let's learn Unreal. But what I didn't tell them was what I'm really doing is evaluating who in this group is good versus great. Right. And that was very apparent that Nick, my co-founder, he would get something done in one day that would take the rest of the group 1 to 2 weeks to do. So, at that point I said, okay, this guy's my friend. This guy's probably the best coder I've ever met in my life. He's an absolute memer and hilarious to work with. Like, this is the guy. Right. And so I ended up co-founding it with Nick. Didn't hire anybody else at that point because, we wanted to stay lean and only hire superstars. At that point, I had to convince him to join. I told him the idea, which was exciting for him.
Was it hard to convince him to join you?
It was a little bit, because I know at the time he had actually, so he was considering 2 other options. So he had worked at Taser in Seattle. I think they rebranded, I don't remember their name, but he worked there the previous year, and then he also had an offer from Amazon. And so he was deciding between these 2, and one time we were working on the game together, he got a call from the CEO of Taser, who really wanted him to join, and they offered him a Tesla. They said, if you join, we'll give you a Tesla.
Wow.
So
he gave up Tesla.
So I had to convince him not to take the Tesla, and to actually, instead of making a big salary with a Tesla, I had to convince him to actually put money into this. So each of us put in $7,500 of internship money that we had made from our internships. Wow. And yeah, we were partners, so.
Wow. So 15,000, and that's the start of the company.
Yeah, so that was the original budget.
So how long was it for you guys to use up the 15,000 before you start thinking about hiring your 3rd person to join your team?
So we hired, I think in the first year, the first 6 months, it was just the 2 of us. Like, we didn't hire anybody. We both were coders, and I was the default level designer, since I had experience in Halo's Forge mode. Right. And so that made me more qualified than Nick, at least. We actually, the first person we hired was a kid from Germany. We went to Gamescom in 2017, and we managed to finagle ourselves into somebody else's booth and had a ton of foot traffic. It was terrific. And this random kid comes up to me and he's like, are you guys hiring? And I'm like, well, we're looking for an animator. And he's like, oh, I'm an animator. And I'm thinking like, okay, this random 17-year-old kid, like, sure, you're an animator, okay. But we decided we'll try him out. We'll give him 1 gun to animate, and then we're gonna have 2 other companies that I had met with at Gamescom that we also gave 1 gun, and we had them each do an animation test. And Damon, the 17-year-old kid, put them to shame. Like, this kid was talented. And so we ended up hiring him, and he's done all of our animations for first person. And so that was the first person we hired.
Is he still with you?
Kind of. So he's part-time. He's always been part-time. We don't have a full, it's a first-person shooter. Once you have the animations, you have the animations, right? Right. But we stay in touch, and anytime we add a new gun, he's the guy we call. And then shortly after that, we hired, it was a friend of my neighbor's. My neighbor is a professor at Carnegie Mellon, and he blasted out an email to like the gaming group or something, and we ended up hiring a level designer to replace me. And then we hired 1 artist shortly after that, and like the first year, that was it. It was me, Nick, and 3 part-time contractors, but it was enough for us to have something that was really fun. Even though it was kind of janky, it was a little less janky than when I did it, right? And it was fun, and that was enough for us to kind of get to the next stage. Ended up raising some angel funding, and take it from there.
So talk to us about your angel funding round. Like a lot of people here probably wants to know what goes into a pitch to an angel. Like, how do you convince angels to put some
Yeah.
money in
So
a bunch of kids who,
I don't really have great advice for this because we got kind of lucky, is the truth. I didn't have any sort of anything prepared. So we actually, through a friend of a friend, we got connected with a guy named Jim Morris, who is a fantastic supporter and our first angel investor. And Jim, I remember we met with him like a year into development. And at the time, Nick didn't even want to meet with him because we're like, this guy's not going to give us, who would give us money, right? Like
Right.
nobody's going to give us money. And we end up deciding like, okay, we'll take the meeting. We'll hear this guy out. So we show him the game. And I remember telling him about some of the clever little things that we had done because we had a little bit of traction. And I think we had like 25,000 alpha signups without spending any money, right? And it was like 20 minutes into this conversation, Jim just goes, "Well, I'd put in 500K right now," and we're just like, "What? Like, is this guy crazy? Like, what? Like, we have a game and like 2 people and then 3 contractors, right?"
Right.
I mean, we certainly believed that it would be great, but we thought like, no investor is going to believe in this yet, right?
Right.
But anyway, Jim was a big believer, and he bets on people. He doesn't bet on products. So
Is he the only one that came in on your angel round?
no, we ended up raising, and it was a number of friends and family, and Jim had some friends, Draper Dragon Fund
Right.
of the VC. We ended up pitching to them and getting some funding from them as well.
Was it hard, like when you raised that first seed angel money? Like
It was
how
time
many
consuming.
hours? Like how many days
Oh.
or hours do you spend?
Well, it was sort of a rolling close, right? So
Right.
I think, after we got the commitment for 500K, we kind of reevaluated and we said, okay, well, maybe this thing's not actually as hard as we thought. We're thinking we're not going to raise anything. We thought the budget was 15K.
Right.
So then we put together a budget and we said, okay, well, what does a 500K Splitgate look like? Well, what is a $2 million? What is a $1 million? What is a $2 million? Like how does that change things? Like, do we try to raise more? And I think we initially raised maybe around 2.
So with the 500K leading the round, quote unquote, as an
Yeah.
angel,
Yeah.
was it like a typical pre-seed or is it like a warrant? Tell us a little bit more in a bit detail. Like,
Say that one more time.
was it like a warrant or was it like a typical pre-seed?
We did it in a safe.
Okay, safe. Got it.
Yeah. I think that's the best way to do it. Just keep it simple. So
Got it. So you got safe for 2 million.
yeah.
And then that gives you money to start hiring your
Start
first full
hiring.
time.
Yeah. So
Right.
we hired a lot. I mean, I think we went from 5 at that point to maybe 14 over the next six to 8 months.
So that's pretty fast hiring. So tell us how you approach the hiring. Like what's important when you hire your first few people? I know that you still interview all of them, but at the early days, how do you make sure that they are fit?
It's a good question. I mean, I think the main thing is you got to have a very high bar. You can't settle on talent, and you can't settle on culture fit. And I think for us, it's very important that not only do we hire the best talented people we can find, but it's very important that we, that there's an understanding. This is a startup. I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of it is just a gut check, to be totally honest. Does this person seem bought in? Are they passionate? Are they in this for the long run? I don't have a great answer other than go with your gut. As cheesy as that sounds, if your gut is telling you not to hire somebody, or if you have any question marks, that's not a good hire, especially at the early stage.
Wow, that's something. Now, then you have 14 people. Then what's next? How do you organize the team from 2 + 3 contractors, some are part-time, to 14
Yeah.
people?
Well, so we kind of lucked out, to be honest. So one of the first people we hired after that was Danny, our art director. And Danny was somebody that was out of the games industry at this point. He actually was a friend. He knew my sister, actually. He was in a singing class, oddly enough. And he previously had worked at EA for like 7 years and was out of the games industry for the last few years and doing his own startup. And we talked to Danny and showed him, and we, basically just through my sister, we showed him the game, and he was super excited. He's like, man, this is awesome. But his reaction as an artist was like, I want to make this better, right? Like, you've got this great game, it's super fun, but I could make it even better.
I guess that's how you find that he could be a good fit, right?
Yeah. And I think also just, especially if you have friends of friends, or if it's somebody where you have a mutual connection, it just makes it a lot easier. So we sort of lucked out with Danny and trusted him to make good hires.
Cool. So you have a bunch of people. Throughout the process, how do you engage your investors? Like, are you engage them? How helpful are they after they give the money? In terms of you building the team, in terms of you going to market, like.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's different at every stage, right? So like at the angel stage, your investors aren't that involved. I mean, some of them are. Like Jim was involved; he was very helpful. But we had a lot of investors that are writing 50K checks or 100K checks, and those are the kind of people where if you happen to have a mutual connection or they know somebody that you want an intro to, you leverage that when you can. But you realistically, you can't maintain that relationship with all 10 plus of your angel investors. So I think, but at the seed stage, like our seed round back in May was, it was led by Galaxy Interactive, and then we had V Games, One Up Fund, and Lakestar. And each of them has contributed in different ways. So I think like hiring is one big thing. Like, even, Daniel in the crowd, right? We've had him help interview. So sometimes it's having him interview to evaluate talent, because I want to get his perspective on, is this a good hire? What do you think? Part of it is also selling people, right? It's one thing for me as the CEO to try to sell a candidate on why this is going to be massive. But, the investors, they've put money into this thing. They also have a little bit more credibility than I do, because of course I think my own thing's going to be massive, right? But having an investor to tell them why they think it's a good bet and why they put however many $1 million into this company and why they think it's going to 10x, that's a perspective that can really get people excited.
So going back to the time before you do your seed round, tell us about the journey of the game itself and that led you to feel that you're ready for the seed round.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a long story. I think, so the first thing to know is when we set out to do this, we didn't want to take the traditional gaming approach. So we sort of view ourselves as a Silicon Valley tech startup that happens to be making a video game. And so that has sort of manifested itself in a number of ways. One of those ways is how we approached our initial launch. So if you think of most video games, especially like when we were getting started, this is before Fortnite and Apex and Warzone, right? Most video games were very hit driven, right? It's like a movie. You spend years and years developing your product, all to kind of hype it up right at the end and put all your money into marketing the first few weeks. For us, we knew that was not a fight that we would win. So for us, we said, that doesn't make any sense. Why do I want to spend my valuable marketing dollars on the first few weeks when I know my product will be at its absolute worst? I would rather launch my MVP, my minimal viable product, as quickly as possible. As soon as I have something fun, I'm just going to put it out there. Because if I get real users playing with my game, that's how I'm going to get feedback. That's how I'm going to learn. And ultimately, that's what's going to dictate what direction we take this thing in. So that kind of mindset from the get-go, I think was really helpful for us. So that's kind of how we set out to do it. So in May of 2019, we did our soft launch, which did not go as well as we had hoped, but we knew this is part of the process. We're not going to be Fortnite on day one, right? So we launched this thing. We learned a ton. We just kept iterating, get 1% better every day, right? And eventually that adds up. And at the end of 2 years of this, I think our Steam reviews had gone from like 67% positive to 95% positive. Our retention data had 3x'd
So
since
this is
launch.
2 years.
This is in a 2-year span, yeah. And eventually we got to the point where we said, okay, now it's time. We've got the numbers pretty good. We're happy with the current state of the game. It's not done, of course. It's never done, but it's time to come to more platforms. So that's when we set out to go raise the seed round. That one was really tough. The A round, that was pretty easy.
Yeah.
But the seed
seed
round
was
was insanely difficult.
Hang on that thought. So in that 2 years, when you are iterating, what are the biggest lessons learned within that 2 years that you can share with folks here? Because a lot of us in this room is actually making games.
Yeah.
So what is that 2 years must be painful, right? There's a lot of ups and downs.
It's a lot of ups and downs. I mean, I truly it's cheesy to say, but I think never give up is kind of like the best way I could put it, because every single founder, everybody, literally, like
Right.
what founder hasn't had a breaking point where they're about to give up?
Right.
So for us, we had 2 very pivotal moments where we were ready to quit, basically. The first one was we did the launch. We were not happy. We were disappointed, right? It did not go very well.
How do you keep the morale of the team high when you have a disappointed launch?
I think that you have to. I'm an optimist, and I have extreme confidence, and I think that if your team sees that in you as a leader, and you can never show them signs of doubt. Even when I did doubt myself and I doubted it, I would never show the team that. Like every time I'm talking to the team, I have unlimited faith that this thing will succeed eventually, and I'm never going to show them. Because as a founder, like you're gonna have ups and downs, but you have to deal with that on your own time. You can't let other people see that.
So how do you deal with that? Like, what is your support system? Because being a founder and CEO is very lonely, right? You have to put a brave face out there, but at the same time, you're scared like shit. Maybe, like I know I did.
So I think it's funny, but I think I don't know. Hearing yourself talk gets you to actually believe what you say.
So like in the mirror, talking in the mirror kind of thing?
What'd you say?
Kind of like you stand in front of a mirror and then you just talk to yourself?
No. I'm saying like, I don't do that, but I'm saying if I talk to the team and I tell them this is the plan and we're excited and this is going to be great and yada, 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 like I'm hearing myself say that and I'm believing that. Even if I don't go in, like if I go in and I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to force this a little bit because I need my team to believe in this because I need morale to be high no matter what. The fact that I'm saying it gets me to believe it too.
Right.
So,
do you have like a support system around you during that self-doubts moment?
A support system?
Yeah, like your family.
I have my family. Yeah, my mom and dad have been with me throughout this process. Forever. Actually, my mom. So I was going to get to this point, but we got very close to quitting after our first. We did the launch. It didn't go according to plan, and then we spent like 3 months just grinding. Like we got the whole team rallied because we knew that was the other thing is we looked at the data and we said, okay, we know why people are quitting. It's because our onboarding sucks. Because everyone loses their first game, they get crushed, they don't even play a second game. So we just got to fix that because we know people like this thing if they can get through it.
So how do you fix that? Do you have a secret sauce that you can share with some folks here?
Well, I think matchmaking. So that was the first. So the first thing we did is we said we got to fix this problem. So there's 2 things we did for our first major update. For one, we added a tutorial because our players need to know how to play the game. Okay. And then the second thing we did is we redid our matchmaking system because that's really important so that players would get better games. And we really rallied behind this belief. And I truly believed, I said, okay, we're going to turn this thing around. Like the numbers are going down, but we know if we can do these 2 things, it should get substantially better. And so we did this big update. We spent a little bit on marketing to try to turn it around. It didn't get better. Our retention did improve, but it wasn't enough to move the needle. I mean, the day one retention improved, but people were still quitting. We couldn't get past that hump. And that was what I was getting at. That was the first time where we were ready to quit. And we got very close to saying, we're done. We tried. We gave it another 3 months. And the turning point there was actually my mom, who she basically yelled at me. She said, "This is bullshit. Like, you've been grinding on this. You know you have something special, and you guys are gonna give up right now just because it didn't work out on your first and second try. Like, that's bullshit. Like, you better get back to work."
Right.
And that mentality, I mean, that really just resonated with me, and was like, all right, you're right. Like,
Was it in the middle of the 1 year or two? In the middle of the 2 years trial and error kind of grind, or was it like closer to the end, or when was that timeline? So you mentioned
this was 3 months after our MVP launch.
Got it.
So this is like September, October of 2019.
Got it. And what's next? What's your other secret sauce that?
So at that point,
So you improved the retention with your
so
tutorial
it
and
did
matchmaking?
improve. It wasn't where we needed it to be, but it was substantially better. It was like a 30% increase. So for us at that point, I mean, I think you kind of have to have a North Star. Back to your question of like, how do you keep morale high? Well, you have to have something to look forward to give people a reason to be like, okay, well, if we do this thing, then we'll succeed.
Right.
And so for us, kind of the next thing was like, okay, it didn't get us to where we want to be, but we did make major progress. So what's the next major thing we can do? And then on top of that, like, we're going to come to console. Like, let's give it another shot. Like, we'll come to Xbox and PlayStation, but before we do that, we got to figure out all this other stuff. But what kept us going, I think, on top of that was we knew we had something extremely unique and extremely fun. So even though we didn't have all of the other stuff figured out, we knew that there were enough people out there that played this thing and said, man, I love this. Like, this is my favorite game. So I think the combination of that and then having a plan of like, okay, we're going to come to console. We will have another chance at this. And also having that, looking at the numbers and saying, okay, well, the player base is still small, but we can see the changes we made in 3 months did actually improve.
Right. So it's not one or two things, just like a lot of grind for the 2 years, and then you feel you're ready to do seed round.
Yeah.
So tell us about your seed round.
Tell you about the net.
Tell us about your seed round.
The seed round.
Yeah. You said seed round is the hardest. Why is it the hardest?
So I think the seed round was really difficult for us. Well, for a number of reasons. So we actually, in early 2020, we actually had an offer to lead our seed round from a company. Basically COVID hit. And this was what was the second really dark time for us was we had this offer and it's feeling like things are turning around, right? It's like, okay, we kept at it. We've got an offer. This is great. We're going to have money. The company is saved. And then COVID hit and the offer fell through. And so we went from like this extreme high of like, the company is saved, we've got a lot of money now, this is going to be terrific, to like, okay, no, now we have no money and I got to lay off people. I had to ask my entire company, I said, is anybody willing to take a salary cut and take part of their salary in equity instead? And thankfully, some of those people did, and they're in the crowd right now, but they're still here.
Smart, very smart.
But anyway, so part of the reason was COVID did make it difficult in the beginning. And then I think eventually investors realized like, okay, this COVID thing is here to stay, but gaming is actually benefiting, if anything.
Right.
So that was good. But the problem was at that point, we were a game that had effectively launched in 2019, over a year ago, with no growth whatsoever. So we had improved our retention a little bit, or actually a lot, and we had made a lot of improvements to the game, but it was just never enough to actually see the end result of growth. And so basically every investor passed on us. I mean, we would talk to everybody and we would explain the story. We'd say, look, we're taking this Silicon Valley startup approach. Like, you're thinking about it the wrong way, right? It's not that we launched and failed. Right. It's that we deliberately launched our MVP because we wanted to learn. This is part of the plan. Now we just need some money to go relaunch it now that it's good. And, most investors, they'd sort of buy into it. Like, I'd have a really good first call. I'd probably have another call. They'd be interested. But, when push comes to shove, am I going to put money into this thing that already launched and fit? It doesn't feel very good. And so I talked to, 30 investors probably, and they just pass. And then finally, I got down to 3 investors left on my list. And thankfully, 2 of them ended up, V Games and Galaxy Interactive, who have been phenomenal, ended up being the smart ones and betting on us when nobody else would. Right in the nick of time, too, because we were, this is early 2021, we were getting to the point where we were just going to launch it no matter what with zero money and just go out guns blazing, and if it works, it works, and if not, okay, now we're actually out of business. Right.
So you raise your seed, and right after that, almost immediately, you raise your A round?
So we raised 3 rounds in 3 months.
Tell us about that. What went to your thought process? So from 6.5, 10, and then 100 million.
Yeah, so we raised $6.5 million in May of 2021. And the idea was we were going to take that money, we were going to hire a few more, do some hiring, and then have a little bit left over for marketing as well.
Right.
So the original game plan was we would launch our beta on Xbox, PlayStation, and PC at the beginning of July, and then we would, make sure everything's working, and then do our launch and start spending money at the end of July. Very quickly, this thing blew up out of control with viral growth. So
this is when Splitgate really blew up.
Yeah. So we launched the beta beginning of July, and it's 2 weeks into this. The servers are crashing every other day. It's unsustainable. So I actually called a friend of mine, this guy Boris, who is the founder of Human Capital. And so Boris actually went to Stanford with me and was my year as well. Super impressive guy. And I know that, so Human Capital's whole angle is they basically help you build world-class engineering teams, which is what we are, what we're trying to be. So I called Boris on a Friday, and we're supposed to launch the following Tuesday. This is 2 weeks into our beta. And I call him on Friday, and I say, Boris, we are just dying here. Our servers are crashing every other day. We need help. Who do you know? I know you haven't invested in us, but are there any engineers? This is what you guys do. Are there any engineers that you could help us or send to us or something? And this is Friday night, and he says, okay, let me get back to you. I'll call you back tomorrow. And he calls me back the next day, and he says, okay, yeah, we want to help you, but we want to invest also. And so I'm like, okay, well, we don't really need any money. We're doing really well. We just raised our seed round a month ago.
Yeah, right.
2 months ago. And, anyway, we ended up working out a deal that we're with really good terms that were good for both parties. And we closed that round on Monday. So from Friday was the first call. Saturday, he made the offer. Monday, we closed and the money was in the bank. And part of the reason was we wanted to have this, use this, because we're about to delay our launch, right? We're supposed to launch on Tuesday. We've got a lot of people who are going to be pissed off if we delay this thing the day before. So we talked to Boris and we're like, we got to do this thing fast because we wanted to turn this into a PR thing of look, we're delaying, but it's actually good. We're delaying in order to fix the server issues. And by the way, we just raised $10 million, which is going to help us hire more people, fix the servers, etc. So we managed to pull that one off very quickly.
And Boris is probably the smartest investor ever, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So he got
that's-
in at a very, very good price.
Yep, yep. And the great thing about that was that only led to even more hype, right? So both with our community, but also with investors. So it was literally, I think, I want to say like 10 days after this, I started, getting contacted by later stage investors, and including, Lightspeed and Insight. And it's funny because when Insight was actually the first to email me of all the VCs we talked to, and they actually, the first time they emailed me, I said, hey, I'm not interested. Like, we are way too busy. We're not fundraising. Like, let's talk in 3 months. And, but then it was like 2 days later, Lightspeed emails. I mean, all sorts of different investors email. And so we very quickly realized, like, okay, we're in a position right now to raise a very meaningful amount of money. If we raise the kind of money we're talking about, which we ultimately did, we raised 100 million, like, that changes everything for us. We're not launching this thing in the next month. Like, with this budget, we can go build the game of our dreams. We don't have to cut any corners. We can go build a AAA game that's right up there with any, you name it, whatever game you have in mind. We can build a AAA studio and build a AAA game. So that's what we did, and that's what we're
I
doing.
understand for Boris, it's the right place at the right time. But why did you pick Insight or Lightspeed? What do they? What is it that they bring to the table that you feel?
So I think the thing about, so it was actually Lightspeed, Insight, and Anthos as well.
Got it.
And the reason that they're such great partners, they really bought into the vision. And I felt like with some of the other investors we reached out to, they were just, they wanted to invest because this was a hot product, and they wanted to throw money at it so that we could throw the money at marketing and force this growth. And I think what Lightspeed and Insight and Anthos did is they believed in our vision, which is not to just take their money and start throwing it at marketing. It's very iterative. So our belief right now and our game plan right now is we're still in beta.
Right.
Option one would be to take the money, go hire a ton of people, lose our culture with that because we can't thoroughly vet.
So how big are you guys now?
We're 70 people now.
70 people.
Yeah. But to finish on Lightspeed, the thing that was great about them is they bought into the vision of it's going to take time to build this thing the right way. We got to build our team. We want to hire the best people on the planet. We got to build our back end, which is why we're switching to Excel Byte, so that we can handle that kind of scale when we do launch. We want to turn this thing into a truly AAA product, and we want it to be feature complete. There's a lot of features that we want to get to that we haven't had time to or the resources to. So for us right now, it's like we're in beta, we're recruiting, we're building the studio. We're very happy with where we're at, and we know that when we do launch, we've got the capital to blow the crap out of it. So we got to get our ducks in a row first.
So you grow from 14 to 70 in very short time, right?
Yeah.
So how did you approach growing from 14 to 70? That's like what, 5x? Like, what's the most important? Like, are you still involved in the hiring process? Like, how does
Yeah.
it work to get from 14 to 70 now?
So I think we've done a couple things really well. So if I look at like our hiring process, it was very, very slow at first, and then it's been ramping up really quickly. And I think that worked well for us because what we did is we stayed very disciplined about, we have an insanely high bar. Like, we only hire the best of the best. And so for us, our thought process was we're willing to wait an uncomfortable amount of time to find the best of the best in each position, even if, I would love to hire that person tomorrow, right? I'd love to have 70 people hired tomorrow. But for us, it was very important to make sure like every leader we hired is that world-class superstar, because if I can hire that person, I know that they're going to build their team and maintain that high bar. So for us, it was very slow at first, but we made a few really, really strong hires, and we were patient about it. And then once we made those great hires, there's been a snowball effect because, talent attracts talent. So
That's awesome. So now you have 70 people and growing. You have 120 million plus, 117 million, whatever, in the bank. So what do you do now? What's next? What's next for Splitgate and 1047?
Well, I think what's next, we still have more hiring to do, right? So, I talked about getting our ducks in a row. There's basically 4 or 5 things that I think need to happen before we launch. Number one is we got to have an infinitely scalable backend. Like, we're going to be blowing this thing up when we do launch. So we need to make sure that we don't shoot ourselves in the foot with server issues. The second thing is we got to have a AAA game. Right now we've got a AA game. It's very good. I'm very proud of what the team's been able to do with such a small team and budget. But there is no reason that we can't, with our new, with the team and the people we're hiring and the budget we have, there's no reason that this thing can't look just as good as, any other game, Call of Duty, Halo, etc. Right? The third thing is there's just a number of features. I think for our game, retention is everything, right? And we have a very fun game, but we've actually hired an expert. One of our investors, V Games, helped us recruit this guy. But we've hired a guy who lives and breathes this stuff, right? Progression, monetization, retention, all of that stuff that we've had to sort of figure out on our own. We've now got an expert in that field. So that's kind of been our approach, is like all the areas where we've had to be scrappy and learn ourselves and figure it out, we're hiring the experts in those fields. And then the last thing is we just need more bodies, right? We're at 70 now, which is great, but if you look at games like Fortnite, Apex, these companies have 1,000+ people, so they're pumping out content all the time. We need to make sure that when we do launch this thing, we have enough people on our team that we're in a position to put out meaningful updates regularly.
That's awesome. Last questions for me. When's the next game might be coming?
What?
When is the next game might be coming?
My next game?
Have you thought about the next game yet? In the Splitgate
So I
world?
actually have 2 other game ideas that I would love to do at some point. We're not thinking about it until after launch, though. So.
All right. Thank you, Ian. So that's it. Do you guys have any questions for Ian? Let's do Q&A now.
How did you get your very, very first users? Like, you started from 0 and you got to like 1,000. What did you do? Where did you go, and what worked?
So the first users were our friends, right? So we, probably 3 months into development, we started doing a monthly play test with just all of my friends who played and all of Nick's friends who played. Probably at month like 5 or 6, we started expanding to friends of friends. So I think we had maybe like 25 people in our like private Facebook group. We eventually transitioned to Discord, but at the time it was our Facebook group. So the first kind of major influx of users that we had came from Gamescom. So this was in 2017. We had a very rough game, but it was still pretty fun. And we had one map that was like remotely decent-ish looking using Unreal assets that just from the marketplace. And what we did is we basically, there was a company called Thunder Robot that made gaming computers, and it was day 1 of the trade show, and we see this booth, Thunder Robot, and they've got this massive booth with they've got like 12 PCs set up, and they're showing off their laptops. And they've got Counter-Strike and Team Fortress 2 playing. So I go up to the guy running the booth and I said, hey, like, your booth, you're playing, people aren't here to see Counter-Strike. If they want to play Counter-Strike, they'll go play that at home. They're here at Gamescom to play new games. And, if you want, I could give you some keys to play our game. It's not out yet, but, we'd give you early access. We'd be willing to do that for you, right? And so they, on day 1, they said, okay, we'll let you have a few computers. And so they put us on like 6 of their PCs of their 12. And but of course, like Nick and I, we've got nothing else to do, so we're just manning the booth, and we are going into the aisle like pulling. Hey, have you seen this game? Have you seen it? It's like an FPS with portals, and we're just like totally scrappy, pulling people. And nobody's going to say no to that. So we are like really adding value to their booth. And so on day 2, they're like, actually, yeah, like you want to put it on all the PCs? And we're like, yeah, that'd be great. So we're just aggressively, like, next thing you know, there are lines waiting. And so we just kept pushing our luck. So we see they've got this big TV up top that says Thunder Robot, and it's a slideshow of laptops. And I go to the guy and I say, if someone sees a slideshow of laptops, they're not going to come to your booth. But if they see gameplay of a first-person shooter with portals that they've never seen, they might actually see that and say, whoa, I've never seen that. I'm going to go walk over there and head to that booth. So then we got them to play our trailer on the booth. And actually it was really funny because the only requirement, they said, well, it has to have our logo on it. So I called my sister, who's, the one who did our trailer, right? And I said, hey, like, can you edit the trailer to put this logo just in the top left corner at all times? And so we did. And then, of course, this Reddit thread goes viral about the game that's called Thunder Robot. But it's like, no, it's not called Thunder Robot, but whatever. Like, and then we just, we're super scrappy. And then we had we put a sign up for the alpha that we just hacked together on our website in like a day so that people would sign up and we'd get their emails. And we'd tell everybody, like, hey, sign up and we'll give you an alpha key. We'll give you an alpha key. And by the end of the week, this is like 5 days of Gamescom. This booth, like, these people paid well over $100,000 for this booth, and we just got to take it over for free. And so we ended up with like over 10,000 signups for our alpha by the end of the week for free. So that's how we got our first batch of players. The other thing we did that was kind of scrappy was I found this contractor, just a random college kid on Upwork, and I would pay him, I don't even remember, it was like some small amount. Our budget is $15,000, right? I'm paying this guy like, I don't know, $100 or something. And so I paid him, I said, hey, can you start gathering streamers' information? And I want to know their name. I want to know what channel they're from, like Twitch or YouTube or Mixer. I want to know what their main game is. And so I just had this kid like massively gathering all sorts of emails. And I used this tool called Persist IQ, so I could blast out emails, and it looked like a personal email. It would say, hey, Dr. Disrespect, I came across your Twitch channel. I'm a big fan of your, I've seen your PUBG gameplay, and I think this game would be right up your alley. I'd love to get your feedback on it sometime. Let me know if you'd like some alpha keys. And so we just had this whole process like churning, automated, just constantly reaching out to more and more streamers. Basically, anybody with more than 5,000 followers, I wanted to get their contact if I could. And back then, most streamers actually had their emails on their channel. And you're not going to get Dr. Disrespect to respond, but you'll probably get through to the people who have 50,000 followers. And so by doing that, we got a few playtests where we'd have a Twitch streamer who had 50 to 100,000 followers, which is not nothing. And then on top of that, these people would have a really good experience. They'd give us their feedback. We would then take that feedback, put it in our slides, and go to investors and say, look, we've got 10,000 alpha signups, and here's a quote from this guy who's got 50,000 followers who said the game's better than Halo or better than Destiny, right? Like, and doing that, you can create a pretty compelling narrative of like, look, like this thing has a lot of potential. And that's how we got the seed round with Jim Morris at the beginning.
Any other questions? Well, I guess that's... Oh, wait, one more? Okay, great.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Thanks for a great talk. Yeah, I was just curious about you said you spent 3 months grinding on this thing that you were sure would solve your retention problem and probably solve your growth problem, and then you found that it maybe wasn't as impactful as you thought it was. So what do you think it was that solved that growth problem in the end? Because you said you were grinding and retention kept
Yeah.
on improving, but growth was still a problem.
So there were two major improvements we made, and then dozens, if not hundreds, of small improvements. So the two major like step function improvements. The first one was that first update where we had a tutorial and we had an ELO-based matchmaking system. That improved our retention a lot. It didn't get us to the finish line. I mean, we're never at the finish line, right? But it improved a lot. The next thing we did is we introduced bots. So the second thing we saw with our data was like, okay, so people are no longer getting destroyed in their first game, but they're still losing half the time, even under this new ELO system. And half of those people, they're not having fun, so they quit. So that's like 25% of our players would just play that first game, they'd lose, and then they wouldn't play a second game. So we introduced dynamic difficulty scaling bots, where basically we could make sure every new user that comes in, their first few games, they get calibrated, basically. And it serves two purposes. Part of it is we get to make sure that you don't get destroyed and you do have fun in your first few games, but it's also a standardized test where we can say, okay, this player dominated the bots, he's above average. This player, we had to really dial it back, they're below average. And then at that point, your starting ELO is closer to where it should be. So we're getting you as quickly as possible. We want to get you to those 50-50 games. So those were kind of the two main things. And then it was just, dozens and dozens and dozens of like little things. And also some of the changes we made failed. And some of the changes we were wrong about. Like we had some theories of like, oh, we think this feature will work, and then it didn't, and then we removed it. And some of those features we would actually, when we wanted to test something, we would have it tie to our back end so that we could turn it off without an update. So we did that, but most of the time we got it right. Most of the time the changes we made were good, but you just got to be quick to undo if you need to.
Anyone else?
Hi. Well, you've mentioned that you were a little hesitant to put your marketing money on like early cohort. Were you at any point afraid that you were going to expose a bad version of your game to like potential golden cohort of early adopters, and how did that feel?
Sorry. Can you say that one more time?
Yeah, you've mentioned that early on you didn't want to put all your marketing money on the early cohort when the game wasn't at its best. Were you ever afraid that you were going to expose your early adopters to kind of a subpar version of the game and burn them in that way?
Honestly, I wasn't, which I don't know. Maybe I should have been, but like I said, I really viewed this like just any old tech startup, and it's like, to me, that's what I've been surrounded by my whole life, and I thought, hey, we're just going to put this thing out, and there's a lot of good things about it, and there's a lot of bad things about it, and we're going to learn a ton, and once we get it good, the players will come back. I think it's kind of a myth for people to think like, oh, a game launched and failed and it'll never recover. Like, I just don't buy into that. I think if you keep at it and you make your game good, go get the eyeballs when the game is good, and word will get out.
It's great. I admire your confidence.
Thank
Good
you.
answer.
Anyone else? Last call. Well, if there's no more questions, we're going to wrap up. Oh, you want to say something? Here we go.
So we're wrapping up, right? So thank you all for coming. Please know that Ian and 1047 is hiring. So there's a bunch of 1047 people here. So if you guys are thinking about working for Splitgate, at Splitgate, with Splitgate, whatever, please reach out to them. Thank you, Ian.
Yep. Thanks, June. Really appreciate it. And thanks, everybody, for coming.
Thank you all.